Hey folks, welcome back. It's been about a month. Challenges with health and pain and just a lot of hospital appointments and trying to play catch up with the lost time has meant no YouTube videos, but mainly because I'm dealing with some pain challenges with things like recording and just being at a desk and existing. So it's been a thing, but we're gonna give this a try and see if it makes it onto YouTube. Second time lucky. What I wanted to come and do today was talk a little bit about these two decks. And funny enough, whilst I've been planning to do this for a while, I see our very lovely Thea of Garden Goddess Tarot actually did a video recently about the other deck that exists in this 3 set, as it were, which is the 𝗪𝗁𝗄𝗃 Oracle. It is definitely on my wish list, especially now, but yeah, I don't have that one. So if you're curious about these decks and you want to see the third, which is actually the second creation, then go and check out Thea's video. I will link it in the bio also. Now, I've had the Mushroom Oracle for nearly a year. I got it from my parents for my birthday last year, and then recently my partner bought me the Flower Oracle, which I have been chomping at the bit waiting for because of how well I got on with the Mushroom Oracle. So I've only used this a couple of times so far as it's very new, but because of the structural layout and all of the stuff that's very similar between this series of decks, you'll understand why I felt like I could come on and talk about this one based on a year's or nearly a year's work with the Mushroom Oracle. So I was very excited about them. I thought you might like to see both of them. I'm sure there are other videos out there, but this was something fun and accessible. And I suppose it's not really quite a review or a walkthrough in the traditional way or a pairings. It's a bit of a mishmash of all three. So we're just going to roll with it in a little bit of a less structured fashion and honour the process. I did watch Thea's video just to firstly enjoy Thea, but secondly to get a bit of a grip on if that one was laid out the same. And as I say, this was the first, 𝗪𝗁𝗄𝗃 was the second, Flower was the third. And they all seem to have the same treatment for boxes, for layouts, 44 card oracle, same card stock, same kind of principle, but obviously very thematically focused around what it is that they are speaking to. I studied art a very long time ago now. I've got a tragic memory. I really, really love it. I love some of the periods that are covered in these collages in particular, but I'm not going to be able to tell you what periods of art they are or remember all of the wonderful artists who were the creators of them. So I'm just putting that out there. What I can tell you is these were created by 𝗪𝗁𝗄𝗃 Mag. I'm not sure if all of the people who create that or just a selection of them came together to create these. They're listed in the books. I think there's about 5 or 6 individuals in total that work on these decks. I actually follow the main artist, and I believe they're called Flower Law on Instagram. So before we get into them, I thought I would just talk about what I really loved, what I didn't love so much, and yet why they continuously work for me over and over and over and over again, because I think it was quite a surprise. And the reason I asked for this from my parents is because I thought, well, if they get it for me, then that's awesome. If they get me something else for my birthday, that's fine too, because I wasn't really sure. I'm quite fussy as it is nowadays with decks, but also I had watched a couple of reviews, listened to a couple of people talk about it, and was, very still fancy. There are definitely things that don't vibe with me. In fact, I should talk about those quickly first. The reason that I'm not showing you the cards yet is because I'm just going to take you through them with the pairings probably. In the Mushroom Oracle, because I'm not sure I've noticed it in the Flower one, there's a couple of landscape pictures that are then swiveled sideways, portrait to be included. That kind of just throws my vibe a little bit. Some of the keywords, so they have 3 keywords each. Let me show you, and also Let's take a look at the inside of the top of the boxes. This one's a little tougher where it's new. Are freaking stunning. And honestly, I would like a deck like this too. Thoughts? This looks really rad. I really love this. So yeah, I'm into it. It's a whole vibe. Also, the lighting's dark. It's the evening. I said to my Patreons recently, so I very much will say this to anyone here as well, at the moment for me to show up, I'm just kind of having to roll with it. And so things are going to be less finessed and more rambly, less edited. Lighting may be different because it's a different time of day. We're just going to see how it goes. But if we take the books out, you can see that they've got 3 keywords. These are actually the 2 that I pulled today when I was testing them together with the tarot deck that I use, which I'll mention in a bit. But all I can say is they were very complimentary because I pulled Lily of the Valley with happiness, luck and humility. I pulled the 2 of Cups, and then I pulled Spores, which says opportunity, luck and diffusion, which just seems like a really complimentary message. But what I will say is that sometimes the 3 words, they kind of feel not contradictory, just like they're going in very separate avenues, and not in a way where it might feel like an upright or reversal or something to bring in versus perhaps something that we want to let go of. It's just they have a very different energy. And sometimes the little addition in the guidebook makes sense of that. And so it's not that they don't make sense, but it's just that having all 3 of them on there kind of leads to a feeling of you're more likely to perhaps to use 2 of the 3 keywords and not all of them. That's not ended up being a problem for me whatsoever. And I work with these decks, especially, as I say, this one, in whatever feels intuitively right and makes sense at the time. I will always consider all 3, but there may just be one that feels like it's specifically important or it's really drawing me into the message. I don't really use the guidebooks. As I say, I've more looked at the guidebooks when I'm kind of confused initially about the word choices and curious as to why they were chosen. And the guidebooks are probably the 3rd bit before I get into all of the things that I love. I decided to do it in the other order. That they are done beautifully. You can tell the team are very good at what they do. You can tell that they run a successful mag, well, more than one as far as I'm aware, because it's stunning. And don't get me wrong, I love the inclusion of the coloured pictures and the colouring of the suits, but I find myself wanting more information. I kind of crave it, you know? It's that curiosity, and I feel like because of what I know they write about, that there could have been more in this. But I am very much the sort of person that would have a guidebook that's really boring looking with just writing in it and nothing else. And that doesn't make for the kind of gift package, exquisite experience, or perhaps beginner aesthetic layout, accessible offering for like anyone who buys it. So I do understand why these are packaged together this way, and there's no denying that it's not beautiful. But yeah, it's just a personal preference thing, especially with the 3 keywords. I feel like some of these cards have a tiny little bit more information on them than the mushroom. I feel like, yeah, the mushroom, the font's a tiny bit bigger. But it's much of a muchness. The guidebooks are still there if you want them. They have the same treatment. As you could see, it sort of takes you through the structure of the decks, and they call them suits. I kind of call them subcategories, and the reason being is my experience of these decks is that you don't really feel forced upon by these. They're just a really nice enhancement. So it's not like working with a deck with a heavy oracle structure, in my experience. Sometimes I may pay attention to these, sometimes I may not, especially when I'm just pulling one of them to go with a tarot reading, which tends to be the case. But I do like the layer, and they talk about them very thoughtfully, and the intro to each is very themed. This one obviously about mushrooms, and it gives you that little bit of a foresty story invitation, and this one about flowers. They do stick with their language really well, which is lovely. They have some spreads in here, and then each of them are broke down. There's 4 subcategories in this one and 3 in this one, but 44 cards throughout the decks. Obviously, I've said I love the quality of them. Whilst I'm not the pickiest, I definitely have got pickier about the quality of decks over time, but it's more to do with things like how friendly they are on my hands, how durable they are, and you know, if people have been really conscious in the way they're created, that's a massive bonus too. So these don't always hit all of those things, but they certainly feel like really high quality. I just adore the art style and mood. I'm not going to lie, there is a big aesthetic pull for me. That's how I really got drew into the mushrooms one. It feels like that moody forest invitation. It is the sort of vibe that I get from my Somnia tarot. It's a similar-ish vibe sometimes I get from some of my Fae decks and also my Fallen Angels. So that mood creation, for the most part, it's really funny because they're the things that I was hesitant about, and in practice these decks just work for me time and time and time and time and time again, and that's why I'm really excited about them. And I decided, right, that's it, I want the 𝗚liche one as well. I think I'm just enjoying the artwork so much, and the invitation to bounce from these words with the tarot deck that I predominantly am using them with, that it's just become that sort of exquisite process for me. Perhaps if I had the same reservations about other decks, I wouldn't have enjoyed them in practice, you know? I've definitely had issues with decks where there's keyword issue and they haven't stayed. I do think that the 3 keywords offers some versatility on the opposite side of things. So whilst there isn't always that, I suppose, harmony for me between the 3 of them, which I don't want them to be repetitive anyway, you know, not just synonyms for each other, but I suppose I want to feel like I can weave a web through them, and occasionally it's not as easy as others, but I do think that that offers versatility. I just love the art styles and how they're layered together, and I think that that in itself probably gives me a lot of nostalgia for times when I was studying art and the history of it and going to museums, and some of these pieces or layers of them anyway are really familiar to me, even if I don't remember the names of them. I really enjoy that. So they've ended up being a big yes for me, and I think that's the fun thing about bonding with decks, is that for me it's not about this concept of finding the perfect deck. It's about having that connection with them. Hopefully the light isn't blasting that out too much. So here is my favourite pairing, and predominantly the main pairing for the Mushroom Oracle. This bright blue does kind of it does kind of change the mood, but it's not like that in all of it. So this is the Somnia tarot, or at least a portion of it, because it was otherwise really unevenly stacked. It's really hard to encapsulate entirely why I like these 2 decks together. And if I start flicking through, then if you're interested in the Mushroom Oracle, you can just sort of acquaint yourself with some of them that way. But I think that there's something about the other world and the liminal dreamscape that really sync up for me. And I think that whilst they have considerable distinctions, there's also something familiar between the two, you know, like some kind of intimate bond, as it were. And this deck definitely does feel like it's got some ethereal beings in it. It feels like it's got the fae in it. It's got forest creatures. Sometimes there's various animals, like in the healer, which the snake just feels like a really wonderful inclusion. The snake's in a few cards in this, but for the healer, if we think about the venom of the snake, whilst it protects them, and therefore if you get bitten by a snake, the venom of it could be the very end of you, we have utilised venom and created, I suppose, medicinal ways of utilising it that do have healing properties, that can create something entirely different from the outcome. I think that that's pretty freaking amazing as it is, but that's something that I noticed straight away, especially working with animals. And whilst the 𝗺cie Tarot gives that walking within a dream sensation, for me at least, I really feel like the creator did well with that. There's a lot more little snippets and invitations in the Mushroom Oracle and the Flower Oracle for me to add some of those nuances. Sometimes the artwork in these decks is more of a, I think mood is the right term I want here, like more of a invitation into the feeling rather than a representation in an obvious manner. So this is kind of abstract to me. This individual is kind of draped in this beautiful mossy coloured robe, and then here in the background you've got what looks like a thicket or something like that, and then we've got a slug, which slugs always love the moss in my old garden. I actually worked with moss and the spirit of moss and moss in my practice lots and lots and lots at our old place, and I really like the keywords tender, attention and old soul. I can definitely resonate with all three of those. So do you see what I mean? It's not that they're echoing each other. There's some kind of flow between them. They feel 𝗵𝘁𝗍𝗀 to me. It's not, like I said, the other ones don't. There's just a couple where sometimes, like I say, two keywords feel like they work together, whereas the other one, I would work with it separately. I love this so much. And there's quite a lot to work from in these. So we've got Dewdrop, but you can see like there's quite a bit going on here. We've got a little frog up here. It does feel like I'm invited into a different world, and that's why I think I really like these two together. I know they might not be an obvious art choice per se, and it's funny because whilst this isn't photography, it does feel like it lends itself to being with photographic decks, but perhaps that's because I don't have other collage decks really. I mean, I have the Lioness Oracle Tarot, but that feels very cosmic and spacey. I don't imagine putting them together, not just because of the aesthetics, because as you can see I'm quite open to playing with the aesthetics, but more to do with the energetic alignment, a wandering liminal space, and the same in the forest. Just again, they have that meeting for me of familiarity. So I absolutely love these two together, especially when we get colours mirroring each other, vibes mirroring each other. This is shuffled, believe it or not. So we've got the Queen of Coins for the Earth Star, Emissary, Keeper, Shapeshifter. Oh, when it said Shapeshifter, I was very much thinking like the Queen turning into a hare and sort of running off into the distance. They just really are a mood. They've given me some really deep readings, and in terms of the way that I use them as a collaboration, I get a lot from one card from the 𝗺cie Tarot, full stop. So that in itself means that the type of complementary deck that I want, which is funny because like I said, the artwork's not exactly spacious, but the invitations feel quite spacious to me, and it just adds a nuance and a flavour as I sort of dive into the tarot card or cards that I've chosen. I'm trying to think of the third deck that I used with the 3 of these. It may very well have been the Fallen Angels, actually. Ooh, Knight of Cups, Lucidity, Perception and Future. I can't help myself. It's just, yeah. They're very good together. So one of the things that I wanted to add, because like I said, predominantly I've used this either alone with the 𝗪𝗂𝗍 Tarot, or I'm pretty sure the trio that I was using was these 2 and the Fallen Angels, which is just a freaking beloved deck of mine anyway. People have very mixed feelings about it, so I never bothered reviewing it so far, but I probably should at some point. So if you're ever curious, let me know. But anyway, one of the things that I associate mushrooms with, although they can exist a lot of the year here, but like where I live, you're most likely going to see them in autumn or in the really mild portion of winter. Of course, there are some that are present at other points, but if you want to see like a plethora of them and all different variations, that seems to be like the key time to go foraging. And when I say foraging, my type of mushroom foraging is to look at the plants, to work with the spirits when I'm in their presence, and to take pictures of them because I love photography. But I don't actually forage as in taking them from the forest. I am not familiar enough with mushrooms to be doing that anyway, but I do practice identification and stuff as well as the photography. And it's a funny one because the deck is then kind of a beautiful infusion for me. The same with the flower one. The way that I work with flowers and mushrooms and things like that is very different to how I utilize animal gnosis in like a practice all of the time, and that sort of bleeds into so many avenues. Whereas this is a lot more simplified, pared back. It's just a few things like a mushroom, or with the flora, I work with the flora in my garden and my local areas, anything that I might use in food. And when I'm doing that, then I'm working with the spirit of them when I'm in the presence of them again. But when I'm working with the decks, I'm not really engaging with the plant spirits in the same way. It's more the deck has an infusion of them and I use that in a respectful way, but it's not the same part of my practice. I'm not sure if that makes sense, but it is a nice way to bring the outdoors inside when I otherwise can't. And because this felt very like autumn into winter to me, I keep calling it the floral one, but the flower oracle feels very spring to summer, and I thought that would be a really nice change up if I wanted to use them seasonally. So I'm going to put some more of the 𝗪𝗂𝗍 Tarot with the other one and just kind of show you what it looks like at first, because I think most people are going to go, no, and then tell you about why I said, yes, to that particular pairing in the end. There is a lot of green in some of these cards and a lot of warm, well, not warm, sorry, but just bright contrasted colours. And this is a lot more subdued and kind of barren in places, and why I realised the seashell oracle, because there's so much water in this as well, but they really feel like energetically they speak to each other well, and perhaps it is just the gap that this gives me and the options. But for me, the fact that the bat would come up with the moon, I know because I haven't shuffled, they're not all necessarily going to sync up like this. And so we've got misunderstanding, good fortune, perception. I don't think that I could summarise that better. It just feels like a really perfect mirroring of each other. And so whilst I really love to go for aesthetic pairings as well, I wouldn't say known, but I have been known more often as well to just go based on the vibes, I guess, is what the cool kids say, right? Is the vibes. 3 of Coins, affection, deliciousness, and bonds. Do you see? Do you see? I'm sure I'll get one that doesn't quite work, but I mean, perhaps I won't. It's all about how well we can make them make sense together as well. And so obviously that's a really personal thing. These make sense to me, whereas if they are not making sense to you, then like I said, this is more me sharing my practice as opposed to trying to sell you a product, which of course I'm not trying to do. It's funny that the Seven of Wands comes up with B, but more so because I feel like we need to bring this energy to the B. Some really fiery, passionate revival about what's going on with bees at the moment and how important it is as a part of our ecosystem. I mean, we could argue this about so many animals, but as bees are here and present with us, and I mean, we need to do this for humans as well. There's that sense of like justice work and what your practice is actually made up of, you know, and living that, being the activity. What is the essence? What is the essential part of that? How can we be more diligent with it? Six of Coins, prosperity, introspection and virtue. Yes, how can you share this? If you have prosperity, how can you share it? How can we accept it? Like, I'm really curious to hear, because these two next to each other and was like, womp womp. And I was like, it's just not feeling the same. And of course it's not feeling the same as the mushroom one, because the layers and the art that are chosen to set the mood. And so the mushroom is a hell of a lot darker and far more complementary of the Somnia, although you do get these wonderful moments where look how grungy both of the backgrounds are. And then we've got the red here, which is a bit more obvious in the flower, but we've got it here underneath the night. And what's interesting is the little lights here make me think of the center of the flower here and how the beetle is drawn to it. I definitely find the collage feels a little bit not different in a bad way, not different in the decks are too different from each other, but they certainly have a little bit of a different vibe between the flower one and the mushroom one. There are some differences that I've noticed between the two decks as well, and I will show you that in a minute, but I just really wanted to show with the Somnia Tarot, because I think this is going to be the deck that I'm reading with it, and I know that people may squirm visually, but I'm having a whole moment. Look at the smoke in the background of Judgment, and even the direction of it is the same direction that the wind, this like wind phase blowing, and it says fate, shifts and freedom. Great way to summarize Judgment in more of like a generalized fashion. We hope we get enlightenment from the Hanged Man, otherwise it's a lot of wasted time. So yeah, what do you think of those two together? I don't know how many more I'm currently inclined to use with the Mushroom Oracle, just because, like I say, I found a couple of fits for it that feel nice, but I'll show you another couple of pairings for each just to play with some. But these will be things that I haven't necessarily paired with the flower because, like I say, it's pretty new. Can we just take a moment to appreciate this bumblebee bag as well for this next deck? Now again, in terms of artistic style, they're not going to be the same, but this is the 𝗪𝗔𝗍𝗍 Tarot, and I imagine there will be a fair enough duo. Queen of Cups for hope, daring and consolation. Five of Swords, and the first thing I thought that I was drawn to was the overcoming. So it's not that I would ignore divinity or immortality in their entirety, although I may very well, it just depends on the day. But for me, the idea of the lotus overcoming, growing through the mud, those layers of it, feels very much like an invitation of some of the work that we can do moving through Five of Swords and like showing up to witness it rather than trying to avoid it or just remaining stuck in the mud, as it were, of the Five of Swords. To give you a bit of a taster, I will open the book and we'll see what Lotus says. The lotus flower rises out of the mucky river bottom, its blossom a luminous chalice seemingly floating above the water's surface. Without mud there can be no lotus. Without obstacles there can be no bliss. Very short, very sweet, but you can see what I mean. Like, it's enough to help you understand why these keywords were chosen for this flower. Would I have loved more? Yes. I'm a greedy little goblin, and the book, they're okay. 5 of Cups, have faith, be courageous, and work with our multitudes of emotion. Yes. I like these two together. Why are all the 5s together? I must have been doing something with it because the rest of the cards are shuffled. 5 of Pentacles for hallucination, seduction and visions. See, now that's one I would have to sit with and think on. Although I do like that we're trying to see above the treetops here, but actually a lot of the view is shrouded in what looks like mist. And so it's kind of tampering with our view, tampering with our vision and our clarity. And like I said, I'm not going to read with all of them. I've actually just picked up 2 cards there as well. But Strength with Marigold, spirituality, homecoming, celebration. I love that for Strength, especially with Strength as like a really open heart space and the courage that it takes to be present with that and allow for intimacy and take those kind of risks that can have reward and celebration, but also can, you know, be incredibly challenging. So that's the 𝗪𝗕scapes tarot. Now I'm having a great old time with the Mind's Eye tarot, which is another recent gift. Aesthetically, no, but I have a feeling, I don't know, this kind of weird mermaid, fae, alternate being kind of vibe that runs throughout this deck. There's still, even with all the eyeballs, there's still a lot of florals and naturey aspects in there. So I'm just curious as to what they might feel like together. I could be way off, but I decided to go for it anyway. Ooh, I like the mirroring of colours here between the pinks and the greens. The King of Cups for compassion, heartbreak and expression, and a really great one for being able to hold those. I see the King of Cups as like holding the currents of water at its most turbulent, but being able to hold them in and surround them with a kind of a stillness. Obviously that's in their best position, you know, the real wonderful parts of this particular court, but I certainly feel like this is the place that can be held. I know people debate, some people feel like the Queen of Cups is more the therapist, healer, like emotional healer kind of card. I feel like it could be seen in both, but I definitely associate the King of Cups with it in particular, that kind of emotional intelligence and counsel. And then the emotional intelligence that comes up in the Queen of Cups is just a different expression of it, and perhaps more of an intimate personal one, where there's almost that, it's not that there's not intimacy here, but you know, professional intimacy as an example is different to other intimacy. That's just kind of a little vibe. The colours again, Foxglove is my favourite, by the way. So Foxglove and Lavender, they're my jam. Page of Wands for magic, wildness, I mean, yes. And remedy. Sometimes the remedy is putting ourselves into a position where we are not at our most experienced, but we're experimenting and playing and exploring. I love that. Temperance for health, zest and resistance. Yes. Lavender. So this is the one, serenity, cleanliness and distrust, where the book makes sense of the keywords together. But I think I would have just gone in one avenue or another with these 3. They do work, it makes total sense, and because I work with lavender a lot, I think that then I am more particular, and so that's probably what's happened. Whereas, as I say, I'm not really drawing from this and looking to work with the spirit of plants through the cards. I will go and do that with them. Obviously with animals it's a bit different, and like I say, just a whole huge part of my practice, so there are definitely nuances. Also, I can't go and hang out with all the animals not in reality anyway. But yeah, I think that I am maybe a little bit more fickle with that just because of that, if that makes sense. I think I like these two together, I have to say, but I'm not going to run along them too much. This has kind of been a video of, I don't want to say unpopular pairings, but peculiar pairings. Pairings that you wouldn't expect, that feel like they work anyway. That's not going to fit into a title, but that's kind of the vibe. What I did want to show you quickly between the two decks before moving on to one more pairing with the mushroom and then finishing up is a couple of other little nuances about the visuals. And I probably should have done this earlier, but it doesn't matter. As I say, they're set into suits or subcategories as I call them. 3 in here, 4 in here. And the way that they let you know about those in that subtle, non-pressure kind of approach is the borders are colour coordinated, although it's very, very subtle. And then you see it a lot more in the guidebooks, where they had those coloured borders around the edges, but also they have these to show that they have changed shape. And that's really helpful because in the mushroom one, sometimes because the colours are so dark, it's kind of hard to tell. The border colours are different for these than for these, obviously, because they've gone for what matches the aesthetic, which I really appreciate. The only difference that I noticed between the two is that in the mushroom deck, the writing is the same colour as the border. So here, and I enjoyed that. I'm kind of sad that that didn't stay the same, but it's fine. It's not a huge deal. Here in 𝗬𝗲𝗀, we've got the orange write-up, whereas here, and a really good example will be the pink, they've gone for just a uniform colour on the writing and keywords, the whole way through. The border's still coloured, it's just the writing's not. I wonder if that decision was made because there was feedback or whether it was just a change. I don't know. It's quite a minor one, so it doesn't bother me in terms of like consistency throughout the decks. There are other decks that are out that have had like artists change halfway through. That's a bit more of a consistency issue for me, but this is super minor, so again, it's not a huge deal at all. And then what I was going to show you, because I forgot to tell you, the suits in this one are the flowers, the pollinators, and the flower people. I love the pollinators. We have bat, which is a fantastic reminder that bats are really important for pollination too. What's the other animal that it actually taught me something because I wasn't really that familiar with them. There's a bunch of animals, but it was the honey possum, which is in the pollinators. So I really love that they brought honey possum to my attention. In the mushroom oracle, the 4 are the forest, the fungal structures, so from the mushroom, so you had things like stem, the mushrooms, and then the mushroom people. I do think it's just a really nice selection throughout that adds another fun layer to the deck. And finally, to end this out, this is another pairing. So again, it's not an aesthetic wonder, although for me, I feel like the Fae love this deck because of course they would explore this forest. This is where they live. This is one of the places they hang out. This is their realm. And that's why they feel complementary, but also the Fairies Oracle is such a big energy deck and it's such an alive deck, and it really is the Fae for me, that it's very similar in working with a tarot where I'm looking for an oracle that is not really trying to compete, and it's quite happy to offer some guidance and offer some sentiments, but not be the main attraction, the main attention, the main message. The friends for artful, elegant and vessel. I do feel like one is being the vessel for the other almost as well, like a travelling vessel. They do feel very artful. Now, I can never remember how to pronounce this, so I'm not going to try, but the fact that poison would come up with this one is very, very fitting. Very, very fitting indeed. And then it's interesting how you could tie magic and legend into that. They do work really well together, but again, I suppose it depends on how comfortable you are with such a aesthetic contrast. Ooh, the Singer of Healing with challenge, desire and greed, which seems like a big focus point then. Like if we're thinking about what is it that we're working on healing with, this gives us a bit of guidance of what it is that we're trying to work through and with this fae on. 𝗪𝗁𝗔𝗄𝗄, I think that's how you pronounce it, with opulence, wisdom and care. Getting some big singer energy. And my dear friend Luminous Loom. Oh, this one's been through some stuff with me. And I them. With rare, poetic and transformative. Matsutake. I don't know if I've pronounced that correctly either. I mean, dyslexia is never fun for pronunciation. It is what it is. I try. I really like those together. Actually, Luminous Loom is with me in a lot of transitional, transformative times, and the very less favourable ones. But there is something especially precious and kind of tender about their presence. They've spent a lot of time on my altar and welcomed into my space in particular. Oh, also really quickly, but we'll take a nerd moment and then perhaps finish up. This piece of art just here, she's actually in the Lioness Oracle Tarot as well, I believe, in the, I want to say the Four of Swords, in obviously this position around what I believe is like vinyl records. I don't know. I'm pretty sure it's that one. Oh, let's finish with this then, the Dark Lady. And also, I should have said at the beginning, and I'm saying at the end, if you don't like boobies and nipples and nakedness and fleshy bums and stuff, a lot of my decks are not going to be for you when they've got anything mildly human in them. But the Dark Lady for Elder, wisdom, experience and gentleness. I mean, gentleness if you've earned it. So that's kind of my random integration of all things that I wanted to speak about the Mushroom Oracle and the Flower Oracle with some of their deck pairings. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Hopefully you enjoyed the video, even though it's not one of my more traditional review type walkthroughs. But yeah, it's been fun. I just wanted to show up when I could, and with something that was inspiring me and bringing me some joy at the moment. I would say it doesn't always have to be that deep, but actually I think when something's bringing you joy, it is fucking deep and it's important at the moment in particular. So yeah, I come on and I share it with you, and hopefully some of you enjoy it. And other than that, I will see you all again hopefully soonish.